The thermometer on my back porch read 95 degrees, the kind of heat that turns suburban sidewalks into skillet surfaces and makes breathing feel like you're wearing a wool sweater in a sauna. My kids, Jake and Emma, had been begging for relief since sunrise. They'd tried the sprinkler, water guns, even those cheap splash pads that always seem to spring a leak after 2 uses. But today was different. Today, I'd splurged on the ultimate summer salvation, a brand new inflatable pool. It wasn't anything fancy, just a blue and white rectangle about 5 feet long, maybe 3 feet wide, the kind of pool you'd find in any big box store, sandwiched between beach towels and sunscreen displays. But to Jake and Emma, it was everything, their own personal oasis in the middle of our sun-baked backyard. I'd spent the morning setting it up with military precision, leveling the ground, spreading a protective mat underneath, carefully inflating each section until it was taut as a drum. The kids had been so patient, watching me work, their excitement building with each pump of the air compressor. By 11 a.m., it was filled with crystal clear water, a beacon of hope against the merciless summer heat. They were in the pool approximately 2.7 seconds after I gave the go-ahead. Splash fights erupted. Laughter echoed. For a moment, everything was perfect. That's when Karen appeared. I'd heard about her, of course. Every neighborhood has a Karen. She was the self-appointed guardian of suburban perfection, the kind of woman who probably color-coded her spice rack and ironed her bedsheets with military precision. New to the neighborhood, she'd already made quite the impression. Complaints about fence heights, passive-aggressive notes about lawn maintenance. The type who viewed the HOA handbook as her personal constitution. But I'd never expected her to show up in my backyard. Her approach was calculated. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched just so, she moved with the confidence of someone who believed they were always right. Her pristine white polo shirt and pressed khaki shorts looked like they'd never seen a drop of sweat, unlike the rest of us mere mortals melting in the summer heat. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the kids' laughter like a foghorn, "but I need to speak with you about this." The this was, of course, the pool. My beautiful, perfectly innocent inflatable pool. Jake and Emma froze. Water dripped from their goggles, little droplets creating a sad puddle at Karen's perfectly polished shoe tips. I could see the fear in their eyes, the universal look of kids who know an adult is about to ruin their fun. "Is there a problem?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, neighborly, the kind of voice that says, "I'm reasonable. Let's talk." Karen's smile was anything but reassuring. It was the smile of someone who lived for moments like these, the smile of bureaucratic triumph. "This," she said, tapping her clipboard for emphasis, "is a clear violation of community guidelines." I'd later learned the full extent of her complaint, but in that moment, watching my kids' summer joy about to be crushed by a clipboard-wielding Karen, I knew one thing for certain: this was war, and I was about to become the most dangerous dad in suburban history. The envelope arrived 2 days later, crisp and white, with the HOA letterhead looking like a declaration of suburban warfare. I opened it at the kitchen table, my kids watching with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Jake, who was 10 and already developing a healthy skepticism of authority, leaned in close. "How much trouble are we in, Dad?" he asked. The fine was $250. $250 for an inflatable pool that had brought more joy to our backyard than anything in recent memory. The violation list read like a Kafkaesque nightmare of bureaucratic nonsense. Unauthorized water feature installation. Violation of Section 7.3. Portable aquatic recreational devices. Potential structural integrity compromise. Aesthetic disruption of neighborhood uniformity. I couldn't help but laugh. Aesthetic disruption. Our yard was practically a monument to suburban mediocrity. Perfectly trimmed grass. Modest landscaping. No lawn ornaments. No wild colors. Nothing that would offend Karen's delicate sensibilities. Emma, my 8-year-old, looked up with those big eyes that could melt glaciers. "Are we in trouble? Can we keep the pool?" The HOA letter made it crystal clear. The pool had to go. Permanently. No appeals, no negotiations. That night, after the kids went to bed, I spread the HOA documents across the kitchen table. Years of working as an engineer had taught me one thing. Every system has a weakness. Every rule book has a loophole, and I was about to find mine. I pulled out my laptop, opened a spreadsheet, and began my reconnaissance mission. The HOA bylaws were a 47-page document of pure bureaucratic madness. Most people would have given up. Most people would have deflated the pool, written the check, and called it a day. But not most people. Each page became a battlefield. I cross-referenced definitions. I checked measurement specifications. I looked for every possible interpretation that might, just might, give me a way to keep our summer joy alive. My wife found me at 2 a.m., surrounded by printed pages, highlighters scattered like tactical markers, a half-empty coffee pot my only companion. "You're obsessing," she said, but there was a smile in her voice. "They drew first blood," I muttered, only half joking. The kids didn't know it yet, but Daddy was going to war. And in this war, the weapon of choice wasn't aggression. It was creativity. I started sketching. Not pool designs. Not legal arguments. But something entirely different. A plan so audacious, so perfectly engineered, that Karen would never see it coming. By sunrise, I had a blueprint, not just for beating the HOA, but for the most epic piece of suburban rebellion in neighborhood history. Jake wandered into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked at the plans, then at me. "Dad," he said, "are you going to get us in trouble?" I smiled, the kind of smile that said everything and nothing. "No, son," I replied. "I'm going to make things very interesting." Outside, the summer heat was already building, but inside, a different kind of heat was brewing, the white-hot intensity of a dad who'd been pushed too far. Game on, Karen. Game on. Reconnaissance is an art form, and in the world of HOA rebellion, I was about to become Picasso. My first mission, understand the enemy. I started by mapping out the neighborhood like it was a military operation. Early mornings became my reconnaissance time. While other dads were drinking coffee and reading newspapers, I was measuring yard angles, tracking water drainage patterns, and photographing every possible inch of potential slip-and-slide terrain. The local hardware store became my war room. I'd walk the aisles with a purpose, picking up supplies that looked innocent to the untrained eye. A roll of industrial-grade plastic sheeting here, a high-pressure nozzle there, irrigation connectors, foam padding, each item carefully selected, each purchase made to look like a random weekend project. Jake started catching on. One Saturday morning, he watched me arrange my supplies on the garage workbench. "Dad," he said, "are you building a rocket or something?" I winked. Something better. My engineering background was about to become my secret weapon. By day, I designed industrial cooling systems. By night, I was plotting the most epic slip and slide in suburban history. Every calculation was precise. Slope angles, water flow rates, friction coefficients. This wasn't just a revenge project. This was going to be a masterpiece of fluid dynamics. I created mock-ups, scaled models, spreadsheets that would make NASA engineers proud. My garage transformed into a top-secret planning center. Blueprints covered the walls. Calculations filled whiteboards. To anyone peeking in, it would look like I was planning something between a science experiment and a military invasion. The neighborhood watched with curiosity. Neighbors would slow down as they drove past, catching glimpses of my increasingly elaborate setup. Whispers started. Theories began to circulate. What's Mike up to? Looks like he's building something crazy. Is that a slip and slide? My wife found me one night, surrounded by diagrams and water flow charts. "You do realize this is about a pool, right?" she asked, equal parts amused and concerned. "This," I responded, pointing to a particularly complex diagram, "is about principle." I discovered the HOA had exactly 3 paragraphs dedicated to temporary recreational water features. 3 paragraphs that I was about to exploit with the precision of a surgeon and the creativity of an artist. Emma started helping, becoming my unofficial assistant. She'd hold measuring tapes, organize my tools, ask questions that sometimes revealed brilliant insights. Dad, she'd say, what if we made it curved here? And suddenly, a new design possibility would emerge. Each night after the kids went to bed, I'd refine the plans. Calculate. Recalculate. The slip and slide was becoming less of a revenge project and more of an engineering marvel. By the end of the week, I had a complete blueprint, a design so perfectly crafted that it would not just comply with HOA regulations, it would redefine them. Karen had no idea what was coming. The summer was about to get very, very interesting. The weekend arrived like a military operation. I was up before sunrise, coffee in hand, a gleam in my eye that told the world something epic was about to happen. The garage door opened, and my carefully collected supplies transformed from random hardware store purchases into the components of suburban legend. Jake and Emma watched with a mixture of excitement and confusion. Dad, Jake asked, are we building a spaceship? Better, I replied. We're building freedom. Industrial-grade plastic sheeting unrolled across the yard like a tactical map. This wasn't just any plastic. This was military-grade, UV-resistant, tear-proof material that could probably survive a nuclear winter. I'd spent weeks researching the perfect surface, something that would be smooth enough for maximum slide, durable enough to withstand repeated use, and just slick enough to create the perfect water-based trajectory. Precision was key. I pulled out my laser level, marking exact angles with the kind of accuracy that would make a NASA engineer proud. The yard transformed. What was once a typical suburban landscape became an engineering marvel of summer fun. Irrigation lines went in next. These weren't your standard garden hose connections. I designed a custom water distribution system that would make professional water parks jealous. Multiple entry points, perfectly calculated water pressure, strategically placed nozzles that would create the ultimate sliding experience. The neighbors started to notice. Curtains twitched. People walking dogs slowed their pace. Cars driving by would suddenly find reasons to pause, drivers craning their necks to understand what was happening in our yard. Emma became my official measuring assistant. Dad, she'd call out, is this angle right? Her 10-year-old eyes caught details I might have missed. Jake documented everything, creating a time-lapse video that would later become neighborhood legend. By midday, the basic structure was taking shape. Gentle slopes, perfectly calculated bumps, a foam pit at the end that looked like something between a water park feature and a military landing zone. I'd incorporated drainage systems, emergency stop points, and even calculated the exact water temperature for maximum comfort. My wife came out, shaking her head. You do realize this is about a pool, right? This, I said, wiping sweat from my brow, is about justice. The slip and slide was becoming more than just a water feature. It was a statement, a rebellion against bureaucratic nonsense, a declaration of summer freedom. I added final touches, protective edging to prevent grass damage, a subtle camouflage that would make the entire setup look almost innocent. To the untrained eye, it might just look like a perfectly maintained yard with an unusually interesting landscape. By sunset, it was complete, 100 feet of pure, engineered summer joy, a slip and slide so perfect, so precisely designed, that it could probably be seen from space. Jake and Emma stood beside me, mouths open in awe. Is it ready? Emma asked, bouncing on her toes. I smiled, the kind of smile that said everything and nothing. Oh, I replied, it's more than ready. Across the street, I could have sworn I saw a curtain twitch. Karen had no idea what was coming. The ultimate summer rebellion was about to begin. The morning of the first test felt electric. I woke up before sunrise, like a kid on Christmas morning, except my present was about to be a 100-foot engineering marvel of summer fun. The kids were already bouncing off the walls, dressed in their swimsuits before breakfast, demanding to know when we could try the slip and slide. Safety check first, I announced, grabbing my clipboard and checking the final measurements. Jake rolled his eyes. Dad, you checked everything like 1,000,000 times already. He wasn't wrong. I'd run more calculations on this slip and slide than most NASA missions. Water pressure, angle of descent, friction coefficients, potential splash radius. I'd even created a spreadsheet with worst-case scenarios that would make a risk management consultant proud. Emma, meanwhile, was doing her own preparations. She'd created a slip-and-slide survival kit, sunscreen, towels, water bottles, and a collection of action figures she insisted would be testing the course. The first test would be scientific, controlled, precise. Yeah, right. As soon as I gave the green light, all pretense of scientific method went out the window. Jake launched himself down the slide like a human missile, a war cry echoing through the neighborhood. The water sprayed, the plastic glistened, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then chaos erupted. He hit the first slope with such velocity that I'm pretty sure he briefly achieved flight. Water arced around him like a liquid halo. The carefully calculated bumps became launching pads of pure joy. By the time he reached the foam pit at the end, Jake was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. Emma went next, more calculated but no less enthusiastic. She'd studied Jake's run, made mental adjustments, and turned the slip and slide into her personal physics experiment. Neighbors started to appear. First one, then another. Soon, the street looked like an impromptu block party was forming. Kids from 3 houses down showed up. Parents brought lawn chairs. Someone, I'm still not sure who, started selling popsicles from a cooler. Our slip and slide had become more than just a water feature. It was a neighborhood event. Mrs. Rodriguez from 2 doors down came over, her typically pristine white shorts now sporting grass stains. I haven't seen kids have this much fun in years, she said, watching her grandkids take their turns. The sounds of summer filled the air, screams of joy, splashing water, laughter that could drown out any HOA complaint. I caught a glimpse of movement across the street. Karen was watching from behind her curtains, clipboard pressed against the window. Our eyes met for just a moment. Her look was pure, unadulterated fury, and I couldn't help but smile. Jake came running up, soaking wet, grass stuck to his hair, the biggest grin I'd ever seen on his face. Best day ever, he shouted. Emma wasn't far behind, doing a victory dance that was part celebration, part waterlogged waddle. Are we in trouble? Emma asked, the first hint of worry crossing her face. I looked around at the neighborhood, at the kids laughing, at the parents relaxing, at the pure, unbridled joy of a perfect summer day. Nope, I replied. We're just getting started. Across the street, Karen's curtains snapped shut. The slip and slide rebellion had begun. 3 days after the slip and slide's inaugural run, they came. Not just Karen, but the entire HOA enforcement squad. 2 board members, Karen leading the charge, clipboards and measuring tapes at the ready, looking like they were about to perform surgery on my lawn. I was watering my tomato plants when they approached. Jake and Emma were inside, but I knew they were watching from the window. This was about to get interesting. Mr. Thompson, Karen began, her voice as sharp as her pressed khaki shorts, we need to discuss your recreational installation. Frank, one of the board members, a guy I knew had been silently suffering under Karen's reign of terror, looked slightly uncomfortable. The other board member, a woman named Linda with reading glasses perched on her nose, was already measuring the slip and slide with laser-like precision. Is there a problem? I asked, the picture of suburban innocence. Karen's smile could have frozen hell. This, she said, tapping her clipboard, is a clear violation of multiple HOA regulations. Temporary water features must be explicitly approved. Your contraption exceeds all permissible dimensions. I've been waiting for this moment. Preparation was my middle name. Actually, I replied, pulling out a thick folder, I believe we're in full compliance. I'd spent weeks preparing this defense, every possible regulation, every potential objection, meticulously documented. Water flow rates, drainage calculations, temporary structure classifications. I even had a letter from a local landscape engineer certifying that the slip and slide met all community guidelines. Frank tried to hide a smile. Linda was actually reading through my documentation, her eyebrows raising with each page. The bylaws clearly state, I continued, that temporary recreational water features under 120 feet are permitted with proper safety considerations. I pointed to the specific paragraph, highlighted and tabbed in my folder. Karen's face was a masterpiece of suppressed rage. Her clipboard-wielding hand trembled slightly. But the water usage, she sputtered. The potential lawn damage. I pulled out my next piece of evidence. Water bill comparisons, lawn health reports, drainage assessments. Each document was a nail in the coffin of her complaint. Linda whispered something to Frank. He nodded, trying to suppress a laugh. "This is ridiculous," Karen muttered. "You can't just turn your backyard into a water park." But we both knew the truth. I already had. The neighborhood had changed. Kids were playing. Parents were talking. The slip and slide had become more than just a water feature. It was a community event. Frank finally spoke. "Looks like everything is in order, Mrs. Karen." Her face turned a shade of red that I didn't think was humanly possible. "This isn't over," she hissed, just loud enough for me to hear. I smiled, the kind of smile that said everything and nothing. "Have a nice day," I replied. As they walked away, I could hear Karen muttering about appeals and investigations, but I knew the truth. The slip and slide had won its first battle. And the war was just beginning. I didn't mean to become an internet sensation. Honestly, I was just a dad who built an epic slip and slide and happened to document the entire process. But the internet has a way of turning suburban rebellion into a movement. It started innocently enough. My nephew, a college student with a knack for social media, saw the video I'd taken of the slip and slide's first run. "Uncle Mike," he said during a family barbecue, "this is gold. Can I post it?" I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to draw more attention from Karen and her HOA enforcement squad. But Jake and Emma were already giving me those puppy dog eyes. Kids these days, they live for viral moments. "Just keep it clean," I warned. 24 hours later, my phone started blowing up. The video went viral faster than watered down our perfectly engineered slip and slide. First, it was local Facebook groups, then neighborhood forums. By midday, it had hit Reddit. Strangers from across the country were sharing, commenting, creating memes. "Best dad ever," one headline read. "Cowboy nightmare becomes summer dream," proclaimed another. Comments poured in, parents sharing their own HOA of horror stories, kids tagging their parents, saying, "Why can't you be this cool?" Local news stations started calling. My work email was flooded with interview requests. The most surprising part? The community support. Turns out, I wasn't alone in my HOA frustrations. People from across the country were sharing their own stories of bureaucratic madness. One guy from Florida sent a message about his HOA trying to fine him for the color of his mailbox. A woman in Texas shared a story about being mourned for having too many potted plants on her porch. My slip and slide had become more than just a water feature. It was a symbol of suburban rebellion. Jake and Emma were living their best lives. Their dad was suddenly internet famous. School friends were asking for autographs. The local news wanted to interview them about the coolest dad ever. But Karen was not taking this well. I caught glimpses of her across the street, curtains twitching, clipboard clutched like a weapon. She was plotting her next move, and we both knew it. The HOA board was suspiciously quiet. Frank, the board member who seemed to secretly enjoy our rebellion, would give me a knowing nod when we passed each other. Linda, the other board member, had stopped by with her grandkids, who begged to try the slip and slide. My wife found me one evening, scrolling through the internet fame. "You do realize this is about a pool, right?" she asked, using the same line she used throughout this entire adventure. I smiled. "This is about something bigger." A local t-shirt company reached out. They wanted to create epic slip and slide dad merchandise. Offers started coming in. A water park wanted to interview me about design techniques. Engineering magazines were interested in the physics of my creation. But the best part? The community had changed. Neighbors were talking. Kids were playing. The street felt alive in a way it hadn't before. HOA rules seemed a little less important. Summer felt a little more free. Karen watched from her window, clipboard at the ready. But we both knew the truth. The slip and slide had won, and the summer was just getting started. The end came not with a bang, but with a whisper of suburban surrender. 2 weeks after the viral slip and slide incident, an official HOA envelope arrived. I half expected another citation, another threat. Instead, it was a letter that would go down in neighborhood history. The HOA was revising its bylaws. Buried in the legalese was a new section about temporary recreational water features, specific measurements, clear guidelines, but most importantly, a recognition that summer joy wasn't something that could be legislated away. Jake and Emma read the letter over my shoulder, barely containing their excitement. "We won?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We won," I confirmed. The neighborhood had transformed. What started as a simple act of rebellion had become something more. Neighbors who used to avoid each other now chatted over fences. Kids played together. The rigid boundaries of suburban conformity had softened. Karen's house went up for sale a month later. No dramatic exit, no final confrontation. She simply packed up, put the house on the market, and disappeared. The last I saw of her was a moving truck, her clipboard tucked away in a box marked office supplies. The new neighbors brought a different energy. A young couple with 2 kids, they introduced themselves with a plate of homemade cookies and a simple request. "Mind if we use the slip and slide sometime?" I laughed. "It's all yours." That summer became legendary. What had started as a fight against bureaucracy became a celebration of community. Other neighbors started their own creative projects. Backyard movie nights, community barbecues, block parties that actually felt like parties. My slip and slide became something of a neighborhood landmark. Kids would come by, asking to see the famous slide. Parents would share the story like an urban legend. "Remember the summer," they'd say, when one dad took on the HOA and won. The viral video continued to spread. I started getting messages from people across the country. HOA horror stories, tales of suburban rebellion, each one a testament to the power of creativity and a little bit of dad-engineered justice. Jake and Emma were local celebrities. Their school talked about the slip and slide dad during end-of-year assemblies. They'd learned a valuable lesson about standing up for what's right, about creativity, about not letting bureaucracy crush summer joy. My wife would catch me sometimes, looking out at the yard. The slip and slide was put away, but the memories remained, a testament to one summer of rebellion. "You do realize this was about a pool, right?" she'd ask, a familiar joke between us. I'd smile. This was about something more. As the sun set on another perfect summer evening, kids laughing in the background, neighbors chatting, I realized something important. It was never really about the slip and slide. It was about community, about standing up to senseless rules, about remembering that sometimes joy is worth fighting for. Karen was gone. The HOA had changed, and our neighborhood, it was better than ever. The slip and slide sat coiled in the garage, a quiet reminder of the summer everything changed, and I wouldn't have had it any other way.